Hello, and welcome to our lesson on early human evolution and migration. In this lesson, we'll journey back millions of years to understand how our distant ancestors evolved and spread across the globe. We'll explore the key species that came before us and the major changes that led to modern humans. To start, let's think about a key term for this lesson. What comes to your mind when you hear the term human evolution? Take a moment to think about it. You might have thought about the idea that humans came from monkeys, or maybe images of cavemen came to mind. These are common ideas. And while not entirely accurate, they touch on the long, slow process of change that we're going to discuss today. So, how do we know about a past that's millions of years old? Scientists like archaeologists and anthropologists piece together the story of our ancestors by studying a relatively small number of clues. These clues include archaeological finds, like tools, and physical remains, like skeletons. Because the evidence is so limited, experts have to use educated guesses and logical assumptions to connect the dots. This means our understanding of the past is always changing. As new evidence is discovered, old theories can be challenged or even discarded. This brings us to the core topic, human evolution. The chart you see here shows a timeline of different early human species found in various parts of Africa. It illustrates just how complex our family tree is. Let's dive in and understand what evolution really means. What is evolution? In simple terms, it's a very slow process of change that happens over millions of years. This process is driven by accidental biological adaptations. These are small changes in a species that happen by chance. If a change helps a species survive better in a changing environment, they're more likely to live and pass that trait on. It's important to remember that this is not a planned or invented process. It's a natural response to the world around them. Let's meet one of our most distant known ancestors, Australopithecus. This species lived in eastern and southern Africa between 2.5 and 4 million years ago. A very famous example of Australopithecus is the fossil skeleton nicknamed Lucy. Australopithecus belongs to a genus, which is a scientific category for a group of closely related species. One of their key abilities was that they could walk upright on two legs. They also probably used simple tools. Although they walked upright like us, members of the genus Australopithecus were very different from modern humans. They had a lot more body hair, similar to chimpanzees. Their arms and fingers were long and well-suited for climbing trees, suggesting they spent time both on the ground and in the trees. And importantly, their brains were only about 1/3 the size of ours. Despite these differences, scientists have concluded that our own genus, the genus Homo, which means human, evolved from Australopithecus. This major evolutionary step happened around 2 to 3 million years ago. As you can see from this diagram, Australopithecus is a direct ancestor on the evolutionary branch that eventually leads to us, Homo sapiens. One of the earliest members of the genus Homo was Homo habilis, which means handy human. They lived about 2 to 3 million years ago. The name handy comes from the belief that they were the first species to make and use stone tools, though we now know tools existed even earlier. Homo habilis had some features that are more like us, such as a larger brain and smaller teeth. However, they also kept many hap-like features. They had long arms, hairy bodies, and were quite short, only standing about 3 to 4 feet tall. All right, let's pause for a quick activity to check your understanding. On the screen, you'll see 4 characteristics and 2 early human species. Your task is to match each characteristic to the correct species. Take a moment to think about your answers. Okay, let's see how you did. The famous example, Lucy, belongs to Australopithecus. The name handy refers to Homo habilis. Australopithecus had a brain about 1/3 the size of ours, and Homo habilis had that mix of human-like and ape-like features. Great job. Next up in our family tree is Homo erectus, the upright human. This species appeared in East Africa around 2 million years ago and likely evolved from Homo habilis. As their name suggests, they lived entirely on the ground and were skilled at walking and even running in an upright position. Walking upright had a huge impact. It caused their internal organs to shift, which required a change in diet towards easier-to-digest foods, like fruits, nuts, and meat. Living on the ground was also more dangerous, as it was harder to escape from predators. But there was a massive advantage. Walking on 2 legs freed up their hands, allowing them to use tools much more effectively and leading to the development of more advanced tools over time. Homo erectus was getting much closer to modern humans. They were about the same height as us. They created and used advanced stone tools and learned to control fire for warmth and cooking. They likely built shelters and worked together in groups to hunt. Some evidence even suggests they might have been able to communicate using sounds. And remarkably, archaeologists have found evidence that they cared for the sick and elderly in their communities. Because of these advanced skills, Homo erectus was highly adaptable. Starting around 1.8 million years ago, they began the first great human migration, moving out of Africa. Over hundreds of thousands of years, they reached North Africa, the Near East, Europe, and Asia. Why did they move? The reasons are still debated, but it was likely due to factors like climate change and following their animal prey. As populations of Homo erectus spread across the world, they adapted to different environments. Over a very long time, this led to the evolution of several different human species. These include Homo heidelbergensis, the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, and eventually our own species, Homo sapiens, which means wise human. So, with all these different human species around, did they interact with each other? The answer is a definite yes. Modern DNA evidence has given us incredible insights. For example, the fossil of a young girl found in Siberia showed she had a Denisovan father and a Neanderthal mother. Furthermore, scientists have found that modern European and Middle Eastern populations have between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA, which suggests that interbreeding was not a rare event. Time for another activity. Let's see if you can fill in the gaps in this paragraph using what we've just learned. The sentence reads, Homo erectus was the first human species to migrate out of ... They learned to control ... for warmth and cooking, and they cared for the sick and elderly. Over time, populations of Homo erectus evolved into new species, such as the ... and our own species ... Take a moment to fill in those blanks. Ready for the answers? Homo erectus was the first human species to migrate out of Africa. They learned to control fire for warmth and cooking. Over time, they evolved into new species, such as the Neanderthals and our own species, Homo sapiens. Well done! This leads us to a big mystery. For millions of years, there were multiple human species living on Earth at the same time. But then, sometime between 40,000 and 15,000 years ago, all other human species vanished. Only one survived, Homo sapiens. Us. Why? Scientists have 2 main theories to explain this. The first and most widely accepted theory is called an out-of-Africa model. This theory suggests that modern humans, Homo sapiens, first appeared in Africa about 200,000 years ago. Then, around 100,000 years ago, they began to spread out from Africa. As they moved into new territories, they replaced all other human species they encountered. The second theory is the multi-regional evolution model. This offers a different explanation. It proposes that Homo sapiens evolved from Homo erectus in several different places around the world at roughly the same time. This model was developed to explain the wide diversity of physical characteristics we see in modern human populations, and it relies more on fossil evidence than on genetic data. So which theory is correct? The true story is likely a complex puzzle, and the answer might be a combination of both theories. It's possible that modern humans did first appear in Africa, but as they spread across the world, they didn't just replace other species. They also mixed their genes with them. The DNA evidence we talked about certainly points to a more complex picture. The debate is not yet resolved, and new discoveries are always adding new pieces to the puzzle of our origins. Let's wrap up with one final question to make sure we understand the key debate. What is the main difference between the out-of-Africa and multi-regional theories? Think about it for a second. The main difference is about location and process. The out-of-Africa theory says modern humans originated in one place, Africa, and then spread out, replacing everyone else. In contrast, the multi-regional theory says we evolved from Homo erectus in many different places at the same time. This concludes our lesson on early human evolution. Thank you for joining me.